talked with her. She went away, Phil. Who is this man who heals the sick? Who is this man who lives God's word? Who is this man who comforts the waiting? Who is this man with hope for the poor? There once was a woman who cried at the Savior's feet, her sorrow too heavy to bear. Christ smiled and said, "Woman, your love is great." And peace embraced her there. Who is this man who heals the sick? Who is this man who lives God's word? Who is this man who comforts the waiting? Who is this man with hope for the poor? There once was a man who stood on the road into Jericho. Son of David, have mercy on me. Christ laid his fingers on his eyelids. That man began to see. Who is this man who heals the sick? Who is this man who lives God's word? Who is this man who comforts the waiting? Who is this man with hope for the poor?
Good evening and welcome to worship at Centenary tonight, and thank you for that beautiful song to start, Mark. I'm Pastor Michelle with Pastor Erica, and we just welcome you to this time of worship and hope that you'll find the peace and presence of God among us as we worship tonight. I invite you to take the Connect card and fill that out, and you can put that in the offering plate as you go. There's a place for prayers on the back and some information on the front, and a couple of announcements on the back that I'd like to point out. The pile of books just showed up
today.
So if you want to buy Jaber Crow from the church, or if you need one, then you can see me, but probably after my class, because at 7:30. And then we've changed up the note for the progressive dinner. There's an email in there, and it's time to sign up to come to the dinner. We have several hosts that are ready for us, and so if you want to come, and there's a couple questions, if you can let us know which of the items you would like to be interested in bringing, and then we'll sort it all out once everybody signs up. So I think it's going to be fun. I think the Bronze have offered to host, and the Highs have offered to host, and there's a few other homes too. And so I think it's going to be really fun.
Sounds good. And just one other note, we have our rummage sale that starts Friday. So if you have things you would like to bring to church, you're welcome to do that through the end of the day tomorrow. And then if you help with Holy Grounds or come to Holy Grounds, we will be doing to-go breakfasts on Friday morning, and we will be closed on Saturday. So if you are planning to volunteer, don't come on Saturday.
All right.
Why don't you stand and let's join in the gathering this evening. Light and peace in Jesus Christ.
Thanks be to God.
In the brightness of your Son, we spend each day.
In the darkness of the night, you light our way.
Always you protect us with the umbrella of your love.
For you, God, be all praise and glory, forever and ever.
Let's sing.
Precious Lord,
You may be seated. Let us join our voices together this evening in our prayer. Holy God, we bring an audacious faith, bold enough to break through everything and anything that would keep us from your healing touch. So much conspires to keep us from reaching out beyond our self-conception, beyond social convention, beyond the systems that overpromise and underdeliver, to touch into your intention for wholeness. With the unnamed woman hemorrhaging life, yet refusing to suffer in silence, we reach out to touch the hem of the Christ's garment. With nothing left to lose except a life of isolation, we choose community, we choose health, we choose wisdom's wish for us, holding fast to the saving flow of your compassion. Amen.
The scripture tonight is from Luke chapter 8. In the crowd that day, there was a woman who for 12 years had been afflicted with hemorrhages. She had spent every penny she had on doctors, but not one had been able to help her. She slipped in from behind and touched the edge of Jesus' robe. At that very moment, her hemorrhaging stopped. Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When no one stepped forward, Peter said, "But Master, we've got crowds of people on our hands. Dozens have touched you." Jesus insisted, "Someone touched me. I felt power discharging from me." When the woman realized that she couldn't remain hidden, she knelt trembling before him. In front of all the people, she blurted out her story, why she had touched Jesus and how at that same moment she was healed. Jesus said, "Daughter, you took a risk trusting me, and now you're healed and whole. Live well, live blessed." Here ends the reading. On Sunday, as I listened to Pastor Erica preach, there were several things that caught my attention, but there was one phrase that she said that really sent me off on a little squirrel trail. And it was when she said, "You don't just bump into Jesus, you have to reach out to Jesus." Well, and I did really pay attention to the rest of the sermon, but that got me thinking about one of my very favorite books. I'm sorry if I've talked to you about this before, but this book is called Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pal. And it is not necessarily an appropriate book, but I love it. And I love the depiction of Jesus in this book. So Christopher Moore is a really bizarre writer. I imagine that his brain is full of Shakespeare, Bible, lots of novels, vampires, and squirrels that just kind of mix it all up. But in this book, he's taken the gospel story of Jesus, or all four of them, and then he takes a lot of the ancient myths and legends about Jesus that didn't make it into the Bible. And if you took my class last year, you know what I'm talking about. So he draws on those actual stories and puts them in here, and then gives Jesus a best friend from when he was a little boy called Biff. And Biff is very inappropriate, in love with Jesus' mother and Mary Magdalene, and is always swearing and saying stupid things. But he loves Jesus, who he calls Joshua or Yeshua, and that's very appropriate. So that would be what the name would be. And spends his whole life trying to protect Joshua from all the dangerous things that he's doing, and follows him all around the world. And so it's a really fun story. And except I can never get to the end because I know what's going to happen. So usually, so I'm just going to read a little bit of it. This part is where Joshua and Biff are on a journey to find all three of the wise men, so that Jesus, that's like the hidden years that we never hear about from when Jesus was your age until Jesus was about your age. Those years are missing. And so Christopher Moore imagines that Jesus went to visit all the three wise men and spent years like learning kung fu from them and different things like that. So, no, seriously. So anyway, so Biff and Joshua are on this journey, and they go to Antioch, and they have their first taste of coffee. So imagine about 15, 16-year-old Jesus with his first cup of coffee, right? And that's where we are. So, and this is Biff, and the coffee lady says, "Oh, you're losing your friend." I turned and looked around, catching the top of Joshua's head. Just as he turned a corner into the Antioch market and a new push of people, I ran to catch up to him. Joshua was bumping people in the crowd as he passed, seemingly on purpose, and murmuring just loud enough so I could hear him each time he hit someone with a shoulder or an elbow. Healed that guy, healed her, stopped her suffering, healed him, comforted him. Ooh, that guy was just stinky. Healed her, whoops, missed. Healed, comforted, calmed. People were turning to look back at Josh the way one will when a stranger steps on one's foot. Except these people all seemed to be either smiling or baffled, not annoyed as I expected. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Practicing," Joshua said. "Whoa, bad toe jam." He spun on his heel, nearly turning his foot out of his sandal, and smacked a short, bald man on the back of his head. "All better now." The bald guy turned and looked back to see who had hit him. Josh was backing down the street. "How's your toe?" Joshua asked in Latin. "Good," the bald guy said, and he smiled, sort of goofy and dreamy, like his toe had just sent him a message that all was right with the world. "Go with God and..." Josh spun around, jumped, and came down with each hand on a stranger's shoulders and shouted, "Yes, double healing! Go with God, friends, 2 times." I was getting sort of uncomfortable. People had started to follow us through the crowd. Not a lot of people, but a few, maybe 5 or 6, each of them with that dreamy smile on their face. "Joshua, maybe you should calm down a little." "Can you believe all these people need healing?" "Healed him," Josh said. "We're strangers here, Josh. You're attracting attention to us. This might not be safe." "Oh, it's not like they're blind or missing limbs. We'll have to stop if we run into something serious." "Healed! God bless you." "Oh, you speak Latin, Greek, Hebrew?" "No." "Oh, he'll figure it out, Josh. We should look for the old woman." "Oh, right. Healed." Josh slapped the pretty woman very hard in the face. Her husband, a large man in a leather tunic, didn't look pleased. He pulled a dagger from his belt and started to advance on Joshua. "Sorry, sir," Joshua said, not backing up. Couldn't be helped. Small demon had to be banished from her. Sent it into that dog over there. Go with God. Thank you very much. The woman grabbed her husband by the arm and swung him around. She still had Joshua's handprint on her face, but she was smiling. "I'm back," she said to her husband. "I'm back." She shook him, and the anger seemed to drain out of him. He looked back at Joshua with an expression of such dismay that I thought he might faint. He dropped his knife and threw his arms around his wife. Joshua ran forward and threw his arms around them both. "Would you stop it, please?" I pleaded. "But I love these people," Josh said. "You do, don't you?" "Yeah, but he was going to kill you." "Oh, it happens. He just didn't understand. He does now." "Well, glad he caught on. Let's go find the old lady." "Yeah, then let's go back and get another one of those hot drinks," Joshua said. You see why I love this? I want to go, where do I want to go? I want to go there. I think that when I'm reading this is terrible to admit, but when I'm reading the Bible, I'm often feeling like Jesus is always like stuck on Thursday of before he dies, always sad and kind of pissed off and looking a little disappointed at me. I mean, maybe it's because I have a very serious, sad-looking statue of Jesus in my office, but that's kind of the image in my mind. And, and so this Jesus, Christopher Moore's Jesus is just so, warm and loving and just funny and charming and sweet. And you just kind of want to, take him home and take care of him. It's just, I don't know. This Jesus just warms my heart so much. And I think, I wonder if this weird writer kind of knows something about Jesus that sometimes we forget in church. So, Pastor Erica was right. We probably don't have Jesus just like bumping into us in the crowds and just fixing us of whatever it is that we're carrying around with us. But instead, the power of it or the asking of it is really put on us. We have to reach for Jesus. And so I've been thinking for the last several days, what does that mean? How do you reach for Jesus, especially since, he's not walking in a crowd with us right here? And, we talk about Jesus being here, but what does it mean to actually reach for Jesus? So I've been thinking, and so I got 4 things that I think are part of reaching for Jesus. So the first one I think is you have to name what it is that you want. So if you can put words to the thing that's troubling you, it makes a really big difference. So if there's some kind of vague in you, and we all have times like that, I think, when you get a word for it and you can say, this is the thing that's really, that I need help with, that I am struggling with, that is making me sad or upset or angry or hurt, or the thing that's hurting in me, then, that's a huge step in changing things. So you get a word for it, or you like have an intention. I want to change this thing about my life. And then the second thing is to put yourself near Jesus. I mean, you have to actually move. So like this woman could have stayed in her home. She was supposed to stay in her home. She was, the rules were that she wasn't supposed to touch anybody. And as Jesus shows in that scene, it's hard to walk through a crowd without touching people. And so but she doesn't follow the directions. She gets into the crowd. So how do we get into Jesus' space now? How do we do that? Where do you go? Any ideas? Where do you go to put yourself in the way of Jesus? This is the part where I wasn't rhetorical. Any? No, it wasn't. I'm inviting you to speak back to me. Where do you go to put yourself in the way of Jesus? Here. Yep, that's a good one. Yeah, so if you come to church, then you are kind of putting yourself out there. Like, okay, I'm going to put myself in the presence of Jesus, because we say Jesus is everywhere, but Jesus is sort of extra special around when there's other people around. Yeah, Mark?
Anytime you do volunteer service type stuff, like even if it's a thrift store or something, I think that.
Absolutely, because you're putting your heart's intention into kind of opening up to a space that Jesus cared for, and we encounter Jesus in that kind of service. Absolutely. So, yeah. And you can, so like sometimes if you can, but you have to pay attention. So like you said, wherever we go, it's in us. Like if you can find some quiet and kind of center in to that presence that's in you, that's one way to put yourself in Jesus' way, and in service and in church. And I think also, anything else? These are great suggestions. In nature, yeah. And that helps kind of open you up, I think, in a special way. And it's also, it's not exactly silent, but it's a different kind of silence for your brain. Yeah. And community, but that's also what happens at church. But, and if you can't, if you're in a place where you just can't do this stuff, asking a friend actually can be powerful too. So, if you can figure out, I need this, and you're just in such a hard place that you can't really, reach for it yourself. And there's a story in the Bible about that, where the guy gets the friends to take him to Jesus. So you can, one of our hymns talks about, I will carry the Christ light for you in the darkness of your days. And so it's that idea of you can ask somebody to carry you to Jesus, kind of metaphorically, if you can't handle that yourself. So those are the two things. And then the third thing is like the actual ask, the actual reach. There's something about, a spiritual director told me a long time ago that, God isn't a bully, and God doesn't push God's self on us, and Jesus doesn't either. I love Jesus bumping everybody in that story, but there's a sense of, God in the way that we know Jesus isn't going to just like barge in and hit you, even though that was really funny in the story. There's always a point of us asking, and always a point in our understanding that we reach. So, you kind of do all that preparing, you get yourself in the right spot, and then it's your reach. You're asking, and you're giving Jesus permission, really, to respond. And then the last step, I think, is the end of that story, is the response. So it's the claiming it. So when that touch happens, then you claim that something has happened. So, Jesus is walking along, and in this story actually takes place in the middle of another story. So the other story is that a young girl, maybe about 12 years old, is dying, and she actually dies because Jesus doesn't get there on time, but don't worry, because Jesus raises her up from the dead. But on the way, so he's in this important guy's daughter, so he's on his way to an important guy's house to try to save his daughter, and then this happens in the middle of that story. So, Jesus is in a hurry, and if we're thinking of that serious, sad, disappointed, kind of ticked off Jesus, then what would that be like, that moment where he says, who touched me? Who did that? I felt that. Who did that? how can you imagine what that would be like? And for her she wasn't supposed to be in the crowd. Everybody probably knew that. She shouldn't have been there. And then she stands up and she says, she tells her story. So she's admitting, yeah, I'm not supposed to have been here, but here I am, and I touched you. I shouldn't have done that. But, and you wonder, well, how Jesus is going to respond. That's why, I like this, the way that Christopher Morse painted Jesus, and I'd like to try to remember that a little bit more. So think about what if that Jesus was talking to this woman walking through the crowd, was like, oh, wait, whoa, I felt that. Who did that? What's going on? And then the woman stands up. He's like, oh, cool, I'm so glad you were healed. Live well, live blessed. Meanwhile, the disciples are like, Jesus, come on, this girl's dying. We've got to get going. And Jesus is like, oh, I love healing people. Oh, this is so great. So do you see what the difference is there? Kind of the picture that we hold of Jesus in our minds, if it's this angry, grumpy guy, and you Google Jesus art and see what comes up. Kelly went to a thrift store and brought me he calls it job review Jesus, a very serious looking Jesus who's sitting, like this at the table. Thinks I should hang it in my office. So what's the image that we're carrying around with Jesus? Is it this loving, warm Jesus who wants to heal us, who wants us to be whole, who wants to say, live whole, live well, live blessed? That's a whole different Jesus to reach out to. So that's the one that I want to hold on to when I'm thinking about how it is I'm going to reach out and ask Jesus for what my heart most needs. Amen. Let's stand and sing our last song. Lord, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you. So may our hearts be open. May we feel safe enough to be able to reach out to the presence of Jesus around us. May we find that presence in the places that we are. And may we claim the healing and the joy that Jesus is delighted to give us in our lives. Go in peace, but not quite yet.
All right, we're going to dismiss you. Youth, you can head downstairs. I will be down to unlock the door in just a minute. Our Connect kids can head with Shelly,
Right there.
who's coming. If you are headed to Pastor Michelle's Bible study, you will be in the Heritage Room, so make your way that way. If you are going to choir,